We got a ton to talk about this hour, so we're going to jump right into it and welcome in, as we do this time every week, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, Sully, how are you?
You all de-thawed from Thanksgiving?
About 20 minutes ago, I just warmed up.
It was about 15 degrees out there.
Exactly.
Oh, my God. So plenty to talk about here. Let's jump into some of the football real quick. Your impressions of Thanksgiving. I know you've been writing about how it should be kind of eliminated, move those games to week one, get the whole state championship thing going. A lot of pushback from some of the traditional fans out there on social media. So but I'm sure you're used to handling that.
Well, there was a lot of pushback, which I get, but there was also a lot of support. And, there was a lot of support from people, from coaches and kind of players and media people who are involved in high school sports on a daily basis, where the pushback came from people who kind of who kind of attend that one game a year and see it as a reunion or a big part of the community. And I get all that, who like to go there and see people they graduated with and things like that. And even some pushback from people that are, that still love these games and everything else. But, I still stand by my original point that I think it's better for the players, the coaches, it's better for the playoff system, it's better for the winter sports season if these games sort of came to an end and were shifted to the beginning of the season. I just think it would be better for the high school athletes and players and coaches involved. And traditions change. Atlantic City and Holy Spirit used to play in Boardwalk Hall, on the night before Thanksgiving, before 10,000 people. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. So,
right.
And I also think sometimes that, I think people got to look honestly at the crowds at these games. People like to wax poetic and romanticize about, how many people actually attend these games. Well, I actually attend them, and the crowds are not what people make them out to be. And people have these images that these games are played before bleachers and overflowing crowds and 8,000 people, and you can't find a parking spot. And, all I'll say is I had no problem parking at Holy Spirit on Thursday. So,
yeah, there was way more people at mainland Ocean City in late October than there was at the Thanksgiving games.
Right, and there are big games during the year, playoff games that sort of draw more people. So, and it'd be interesting to see how big, what kind of crowds these games would draw, if they were played that first weekend. I'll give you an example. I know Southern Regional and Central Regional have played on that opening weekend, and they were a Thanksgiving rivalry, years ago, and now they play on that opening weekend, and they draw huge crowds to those games, on that Friday of Labor Day weekend. So, it would be interesting to see how many people came out. And I just think some of these rivalries are so big, they're going to draw no matter what. I mean, Millville Vineland could play on a Thursday night in July, and they come to draw, 3,000 people. So, I mean, that's what that's my point, basically. I just think it's hard for a team to finish basically its regular season at the end of October. Maybe if they go into the playoffs, they lose a playoff game in November. I think it's hard to keep those teams together for those 3 weeks, and I think it affects the winter sports season. I mean, the tryouts are Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday of Thanksgiving week. If you're a football team, you're still preparing for Thanksgiving. Then you want to give your football players some time off to recover, at least a few days off to recover after the Thanksgiving game. So now you have football players getting back out onto the wrestling mat or the basketball court, 10, 11, 12 days into the winter sports season. So, and that's especially tough on small schools that feature a lot of multi-sport athletes. I mean, sometimes at Group 5 schools or Group 4 schools, you have basketball players who don't play football. But at like Group 1 and Group 2 and even Group 3 schools, the quarterback is the point guard on the basketball team. So, I just think these are things that are all out there to think about and good debate, all having fun.
Mike, how big of a barrier is Thanksgiving to a true state championship? I mean, it kind of happens right in the middle of the state playoffs. Would they have to eliminate Thanksgiving to get to that?
I don't know what you could do around it, but it is the barrier right now. It is, right now, you saw last night they played those semifinals, sort of what would be state semifinal games. They're calling them the bowl games or super sectionals or whatever. Williamstown and Sayreville last night up there at the Meadowlands. The barrier is Thanksgiving. I mean, the reason why they don't go the extra week right now is because of the Thanksgiving games. And the thing I think that South Jersey people have to look at is a lot of the rest of the state, being North Jersey and the Shore Conference, has eliminated Thanksgiving games. I mean, I think the Shore Conference, somebody tweeted me, has 43 schools that play football, and there were only 5 Thanksgiving games scheduled in Monmouth and Ocean County this year. So the rest of the state has moved away from it. Now, my South Jersey friends will tell me, who cares what the rest of the state does? We're going to do what we do, and we're not going to change. But I think there is a certain reality there that can't be ignored.
Mike, looking ahead to next weekend, Holy Spirit versus St. Joe up in the Meadowlands, Friday night at 5 p.m., rematch of a regular season game where Holy Spirit had an early lead, had a chance to go up 21-0, but was stopped inside the 10-yard line of St. Joe. They kind of gained the momentum after that, ended up winning, I believe, 28-14. How do you see this thing playing out? Obviously, these are two of the best teams in South Jersey. They both have a dynamic running back. Both have pretty good quarterbacks, good defenses, so it should be a pretty good matchup.
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait, because what's great about this game is, St. Joe and Holy Spirit have had this rivalry over the years. They've had, they've met in the playoffs before, but they've never met in a championship game. And I just think they've never met with everything on the line. And I think that's what's really fantastic about this game. And like you said, a couple of weeks ago, down there at Holy Spirit, St. Joe comes in. They were reeling a little bit at that point, and Holy Spirit's up 14-0. Like you said, they were inside the St. Joe 10-yard line. They had a chance to go up 21-0, really take control of the game. They didn't, and then St. Joe kind of showed what they're made of. They gathered themselves. I remember somebody came down from North Jersey to watch that game, and they saw the first quarter, and they looked at me on the sideline and said, "Wow, what's St. Joe doing? They don't look that good to me." And then 3 quarters later, he was like, "Now I sort of understand what you mean, how good they are." Because from the last 3 quarters, they really dominated that football game. And you mentioned, a great running back in St. Joe. You have Jada Byers there, who's made some fantastic football plays all season long. Really been one of the most dynamic players I've ever seen on the high school football field. And he took over that game. A lot of players make one spectacular play a game or one eye-opening play a game. He seems to make 4 or 5 spectacular plays, or 4 or 5 eye-opening plays, 4 or 5 plays where you say, "Wow, how did he do that?" And he did that night, and he sort of rallied, St. Joe to the 28-14 win. So I think Holy Spirit, when they look at it, is going to look at how are they going to try to slow down, Jada Byers, and then you come back to the Thanksgiving game thing. I mean, Holy Spirit had a Thanksgiving game. They beat Atlantic City 44-0. But St. Joe will have been off for almost 3 weeks, I think for 3 weeks before Friday night. So we'll see because they don't have a Thanksgiving game.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that layoff sort of affects the Wildcats. But if anybody can sort of handle that layoff and sort of game plan around it, it's Coach Paul Sacco of St. Joe. They've never been off for as long as 3 weeks before a championship game before, but they have had some gaps in the playoff games because of buys and stuff like that. So I'm sure Coach Sacco has a plan for getting the Wildcats ready for next Friday night.
That guy has a plan for waking up and breakfast. I mean, he's got a plan for everything.
He's got a plan for a summer workout on July 19th of 2019. So I'm sure he has a plan for this.
Talking with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Check out all his stuff on pressofac.com. And you got a couple stories up there, Mike, concerning the Gene Allen situation, the initial reporting about the actual decision on Tuesday night, and then the follow-up story with some of the reaction from people in the community. Just a crazy story, the way this worked out. I mean, there are situations where coaches just don't get reappointed, but generally it's not, after the season's already started.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I think you look at it. It's just sort of mind-boggling, the timing of the situation, and what the kind of board's decision has kind of thrown what is really a shining jewel of a program that to me represents the best of Atlantic City and travels around the state and represents Atlantic City so well. And the Board of Education has now made a decision not to reappoint Gene Allen and thrown that program into chaos. They make that decision 2 days after, tryouts begin this season. They make that decision, what are we, less than 3 weeks now to Atlantic City opening the season at St. Joe on that Friday night, December 14th, against a St. Joe team that is, projected to be, one of the better teams in the Cape Atlantic League, and probably by them hosting Atlantic City, probably one of the biggest regular season basketball games that St. Joe has hosted in several seasons. So the Board of Education makes a decision and really just throws that basketball program right now into chaos, basically, and with nobody really having a clear idea or view on how things are going to unfold.
And Mike, one of the other really kind of chaotic situations is they name Elijah Langford the acting head coach. They didn't even ask him. He's like, I spoke to him last night. He said, "Hey," I said, "What's your status right now?" He said, "I'm the JV coach." So he doesn't even know what's going to happen on Monday afternoon.
Right, exactly, and he has, in comments to me and in comments to me and also, on social media, he has expressed his support for Coach Allen. And that's another thing. I mean, the board's decision puts Elijah in a very difficult position. Elijah played for Coach Allen. He is outstanding young man. He's been with the program 4 or 5 years, but to now all of a sudden turn and say, okay, Coach Allen isn't the coach anymore. Elijah, you are the head coach out of the blue. Does that put him in a fair position? I mean, there's no transition there or anything. So it's just mind-boggling to me. One, the timing of the decision is mind-boggling, and two, that this situation escalated to this without people, coming together or having a meeting or mediating an issue, that it escalated to this is also mind-boggling.
Talking with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. And Mike, you've been covering high school sports in South Jersey for, I don't know, since the Nixon administration, or?
Yeah, almost.
So at least 25 years, right? More like 30?
Since 1993, whatever that is. So that's like 24, 25 years.
Okay, so about 25 years.
Yeah.
Can you recall anything even similar to a situation like this?
Well, yeah, I can, and it's what happens to Atlantic City boys basketball coaches, and I never thought it would happen to Gene Allen because of how he has run that program, the class and the dignity that he has run that program with, the class and the dignity that Atlantic City boys basketball has played with during his 16 years, and that's not to mention the success he's had, and that's not to mention the more than 40 players. Somebody, called me up yesterday and told me, Gene Allen has had more than 40 players during his tenure go on to play college basketball. So, I never imagined it would happen to him, but I saw the same exact thing happen to Joe Fussner in the 90s when he was at Atlantic City. So the same exact thing to a degree happened to Morris Griffin, before Gene Allen. And people tell me the same thing happened to Bill Devaney, who was the coach before Joe Fussner. So it is just something that seems to happen to Atlantic City high school boys basketball coaches. None of the Atlantic City high school boys basketball coaches that I've covered have left the job the way they wanted to leave it. And I know, and right now, Gene Allen doesn't want to leave the job. So right now it's happening to him. Now, is he going to be able – I think he's going to fight this. Is he going to be able to overturn it? We'll see. But, I think the question has to be asked, why does the tenure of Atlantic City boys basketball coaches seem to always end this way? It's not just, what's in common besides these coaches.
Great stuff, as always, Mike. We appreciate your insight and your knowledge on this situation. up against break. Got to let you go, but we enjoyed getting your take on this. Obviously, it's kind of a fluid situation at this point, so we'll continue to keep tabs on it. And thanks so much for your take on it. We appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, buddy.
Absolutely, Sully. We'll see you down the road. Thanks a lot.
See you next Friday night, man, up in the Meadowlands.
Yeah, in a press box. I'll be warm. Take care.
All right, man. Have a good one.
See you later.